Mind Games: The Ultimate Collection by John Lennon is released on July the 12th, 2024. I'm Andrew from Parlogram, and it's my privilege to present my review of this 6-CD box set. In this video, I'll examine every aspect of this remarkable set, from its sound quality to its hidden secrets, and tell you why it's changed my mind. As a kid growing up in Britain in the late 1970s, John Lennon was a mythical and mysterious figure to me. I was too young to have experienced the Beatles, and not old enough to remember any of his solo albums being released, and contemporary reports about him I'd seen in the newspapers really disturbed me. I was 13 in 1980, and was, thanks to my mother's record collection, already a big Beatles fan. All of my pocket and hard-earned paper round money went on second-hand Beatles records and Chart 45s. John Lennon's solo albums were low priority at best. After all, I thought, they can't be that good, as I'd just seen Mind Games on MFP in Woolworths for $1.99. Finally, in November 1980, I experienced the joy of a brand new John Lennon record for the first time. But of course, it was a joy short-lived. This album, which I bought just before Christmas in 1982, was my first real exposure to his solo work. But for a long time, that's as far as it went. When I finally did pick up this UK first pressing and played it for the first time, I was so shocked about how bad it sounded, I thought my stereo had broke. To me, it sounded hollow and thin, with virtually no bass whatsoever. It sounded like it was coming out of a cheap 60s portable record player. But after listening to the new remix in this set, I've changed my mind completely about this album, and I think it will change yours too. This set isn't just for those who've been listening to this album for the past 50 years, it's also been designed to attract a new audience to John's music. And if it doesn't, it won't be for the lack of trying. Sean and his team have to be congratulated, not just for sending me and my fellow YouTubers copies, but for their sheer hard work and imagination in putting this set together. But does it live up to all the hype, or is it just money for rope? Let's find out. The 2-CD version contains the remixed album with 1 disc of outtakes. The double vinyl set, like the CD, has the ultimate mixes on disc 1 and the outtakes on disc 2. Also, for the first time in this series, there's a super deluxe edition, an incredible work of art limited to 1,100 copies worldwide. Details of which I showed you in our previous Mind Games video, a link to which is in the description. What I have here, thanks to the generosity of the Lennon estate, is the Ultimate Collection, a box set which contains 6 CDs, 2 Blu-rays, book, and a whole lot of surprises, which I'm going to dive into right now. Now, the first thing I want to say about this set is how much I like the size and format. Unlike the randomness of the Beatles box sets, and some of the McCartney sets, the Lennon estate have acknowledged that the way these things look on the shelf is important to collectors. So that's one win straight out of the box. But the thing which sets this box set apart from all of the others is its sense of humour and fun. Sean and his team have really gone to town with the Mind Games theme, with puzzles, hidden tracks and hidden images, some of which, spoiler alert, I'll be showing you shortly. But before we dig into the books and the music, let me show you some other things which also come with this set. Firstly is these 2 Apple postcards, and a reproduction of the original in-store promo poster. Then you have your own individually numbered Citizen of Newtopia identity card, on which you can fill out your details, or scan this QR code with your phone camera, which takes you to citizenofnewtopia.com, where you can sign up to join the 10,000 plus population of Newtopia dotted around the world. The card also hides a secret, which I'll show you a little later on. One of the highlights of this set is this superb 136-page hardback book, containing everything you've ever wanted to know about the album, and more. You know I love details, and this book has them in spades. Every song is forensically examined and brought to life with images of the original recording sheets, master tape boxes, John's original lyric sheets, and even the objects which inspired him. Now, of course, John didn't record this album by himself. The plastic UFO band which backed him was made up of some incredibly talented musicians, and it's gratifying that this book allows them to share their stories and experiences about making this album. There's also fascinating insights from the record plant's chief engineer, Roy Cicala, and engineers Dan Barbiero and Jimmy Iovine, who give their own personal takes on how it was working with John in the studio. All of these people have great anecdotes to tell, which are a joy to read. As I mentioned earlier, this set contains a lot of hidden surprises, which I and my fellow YouTubers have had fun discovering, and you may even be familiar with some of them already. For example, here's some printed Braille script on page 17, which translates as "You gotta let it go." There's also messages in Morse code dotted throughout the book. But to discover the main ones, you're going to need an ultraviolet or UV light. Now, if you're getting the Super Deluxe set, that has one included, but this set doesn't. But you can pick one up for no more than $10 online. The UV light reveals this set's hidden tracks on the back of the box, and a ghostly handprint on the front and rear end papers of the book. There are also a number of other pages in the book which hide secrets which can only be revealed with the UV light, as are some clues to the word puzzle on the Utopia ID card I showed you earlier. The UV fun also extends to the discs themselves, which are contained in this folder. For example, CD1, which under normal light shows John's face, magically changes into Yoko's under UV light. CD2, with its Japanese characters and I Ching hexagrams, will keep you busy for hours. CD3 reveals its invisible text under UV light, and CD4 changes colour from white to pink. And there's more I Ching mysteries to unravel on CD6. Okay, that's enough of the gimmicks. Let's now move on to the main course, the music.
All right, boys. This is it, over the hill.
As I mentioned earlier, the biggest issue with this album was always its production. After years of being produced by George Martin and Phil Spector, Mind Games was the first album John produced himself, and finally got the chance to do things his way. But on Mind Games, despite having some great songs and some of the best studio musicians and engineers in the business, the sound of the released album didn't reflect the level of work and skill that had gone into recording it. Now, I'd always thought that the poor quality of the sound was down to it being recorded badly, or that the engineers were incompetent, but the evidence presented across this set proves that not to be the case. Although many of the issues in the 1973 mix were addressed by Peter Cobbin when he remixed the album in 2002, that was 22 years ago, and technology, remix technology especially, has improved. Disc 1 in this set is a brand new remix done by Paul Hicks, and is, in my opinion, a substantial improvement not only over the original mix, but of Peter Cobbin's 2002 effort too. John disliked and was sometimes embarrassed about the sound of his singing voice, and would always try to bury it in the mix or add an effect, which ranged from simple double tracking to the distant strangled sound on Tomorrow Never Knows. But John had a beautiful singing voice, which I must emphasize is in great shape throughout this album, and this new mix brings it more forward to where I think it should be. Also on this mix, Sean has exercised some artistic license with a couple of the tracks, the main one being the complete removal of Michael Bracker's saxophone at the end of One Day at a Time. Also, the pulsating reverb at the end of Aisumasen is gone. Neither of those elements struck me as annoying or in need of removal, so I'm puzzled why Sean chose to remove them, as they were obviously chosen by John to be there. The idea of stripping down John's music began in 2010 with the Double Fantasy Stripped Down album, which I really loved. And the elemental mixes on CD 2 are basically stripped-back mixes. It's not quite unplugged, but they highlight the more acoustic elements of the tracks by pushing John's voice to the fore and taking out the drums. Listening to these mixes is a revelation, and their separation from the distractions of the final mixes highlight just how beautiful these songs are. The backing vocals of the Something Different group, which were originally thought to be a bit over the top, are now essential, and can be heard in all their glory on tracks like One Day at a Time and Bring on the Lucy, Free to People. The elemental mixes give you a real alternate version of the album. But this is only CD 2. There's even more incredible music ahead. Disc 3 contains the Elements mixes, or more accurately, the minimalist mixes. This is where each track is reduced to its bare minimum. For example, on Intuition, you've got just Gordon Edwards' bass part, David Spinoza's guitar, and John's tambourine. My favourite on this disc is the otherworldly sounding You Are Here, which features just the organ and Sneaky Pete's pedal steel guitar. The bass and drums on Meat City, which were mixed well down on the original version, are front and centre here and are such a groove. Now, the Elements CD is a real meditative experience, so it's not one you want to be listening to while you're driving in your car, but it succeeds in adding another surprising layer to this album. CD 4 is the Evolution documentary mixes, and is one of my favourite discs in this set. Each track on this disc was edited down from its original source, whether that was in the case of Mind Games and Bring on the Lucy from a cassette demo, or from the 16-track studio tapes. Lasting between 5 and 8 minutes long, you can hear John fleshing out the song in the studio with the other musicians, giving directions, taking suggestions, and of course joking around. These mixes are truly fascinating, and they save you from listening to 5 or 6 full takes of the same song. Of course, there are many who would gladly listen to multiple takes of everything, but I find these much more entertaining to listen to. CD 5 is my favourite disc in this set, the raw studio mixes. As I mentioned earlier, John always liked to disguise or even sometimes hide his voice in the mix. Double tracking had been his main go-to vocal effect since 1964, and there aren't many songs he didn't employ it on. However, in my opinion, that effect, instead of strengthening his vocals, weakened them, and the evidence for that is right here on these raw studio mixes, and there's no better example of that than on the title track itself. John's vocal on the raw mix of the song Mind Games is, in my opinion, one of the best vocal performances he ever delivered. Free from its double tracking and cluttered musical backing, it shines through on this mix with an incredible truth and honesty, which takes the song and this set to a whole other level.
So keep on playing those mind games together. Faith in the future, out of the now. You just can't beat on those mind gorillas. Absolute elsewhere in the stones of your mind.
CD 6 contains outtakes, and this is the one which is coupled with the main album on the 2 CD and double vinyl sets. But whilst being a fascinating listen, I didn't find these tracks as exciting or interesting as the raw mixes. However, the outtakes disc is unique in the fact that instead of the standard silence of the Utopian national anthem, it has audio from John and Yoko's declaration of Utopia press conference on the 2nd of April 1973. Unfortunately, I can't comment on the vinyl because I haven't heard it yet, but I do have it on order and will review it when it comes in. However, I do know for a fact that it was pressed by GZ in the Czech Republic, which may be a red flag to some. Personally, I prefer vinyl from Optimal in Germany, but we'll have to wait and see if GZ can match them for quality this time. Now this set also includes 2 Blu-ray discs, which contain the entire audio in high-definition 24-bit 192 kHz stereo, 5.1 Dolby Digital Surround Sound Stereo, and Dolby Atmos. The Blu-rays are also a place where I listen to the hidden tracks, which I was able to access on my 13-year-old Sony BDP S480 Blu-ray player by double-clicking the track back button while track 1 was playing. Before the album's Ultimate Mixes is the Ultimate Mix of I Am the Greatest. Before the Elements Mixes is 11 minutes of noodling on a Mellotron on a track called Mellotron Magic. Before the Elemental Mixes is take 4 of You Are Here. On Blu-ray 2, before the Evolution documentaries, you get I Am the Greatest Evolution documentary. The Matchbox That's Alright Heartbreak Hotel Jam precedes the Outtakes, and the Ultimate Mix of Rock and Roll People precedes the Raw Studio Mixes. And there's also the single mix of Meat City. Now, like the majority of people I suspect watching this video, I don't have a 5.1 or Dolby Atmos setup, and listening to audio-only content on my TV is something I don't really enjoy doing. However, I do have one of these, a Blu-ray drive, which enables me to upload the content of the 2 Blu-ray discs onto my computer. In addition to the audio content on the Blu-rays, you also get some video content too. There's a 10-minute black and white video shot by Tony Cox of John composing Mind Games, which was then known as Make Love Not War, in bed at Tittenhurst Park in February 1970. There's also multiple takes of Monty Python-esque footage shot on October the 23rd, 1973, of a Capitol Records commercial, featuring John and a man dressed up as the Queen trying to promote the album. Plus, there's an additional 9.5-minute outtake of You Are Here, which runs beneath the main menu on Blu-ray 2, and is accompanied by images of the tape boxes. Yes, that's all well and good, I hear you say. But what about the sound quality? Now, although I've been kindly given permission by Universal to play some clips from this album, that unfortunately doesn't extend to long and detailed sound clip comparisons. So I've had to resort to my waveforms, which hopefully will provide some illustration of what's going on. Now, as I haven't got the vinyl set yet, it's not really fair to compare that format in this video. So I'm going to use the digital sources I have in my collection. First up, here's the waveform for the track Mind Games from the original 1987 UK CD. Like a lot of CDs from that period, it's fairly dynamic with lots of peaks and troughs, but like the original vinyl, is severely lacking in bass response. That track on Shaved Fish is exactly the same, but the version of this track on the 1989 John Lennon Collection CD is much brighter and clearer, and is overall my favourite of the pre-remix bunch. Things really go up a gear when we get to Peter Cobbin's 2002 mix, which compared to the original is very energetic and full-on, especially in the bass department. Now here's the waveform of the new Ultimate Mix, which, as you can see, fills the screen. I wouldn't call it brick-walled, but that's how all music sounds today, and it's been mixed that way because it has to compete with modern music. Now I'm going to use some of my audio allowance to illustrate how different they sound. It's not going to be long, I'm afraid, but it's better than nothing. So here goes.
We're playing those mind games together, pushing the barrier, planting seed, playing the mind gorilla, chanting the mantra, peace on earth.
The other discs are similar sounding volume-wise, except for the raw mixes, which is more natural sounding than the others, and looks like this. This 6 CD set contains every piece of music that is in the Super Deluxe set. That contains the same amount of music, but just on more formats, so you're not missing out on any music with this set. Although I was gifted this set, I would have bought it anyway, and my opinions would be exactly the same. So if you're someone who's on the fence about this album, or perhaps have decided to skip it, I'd say you're missing out on a really great experience. So forget the crappy sound quality of the original. This is an album which is now reborn. And whilst Plastic Ono Band may be a better album, I'm going to be playing this one for fun more often. So hats off to Sean and everyone involved in this terrific set. I look forward to reviewing the vinyl and maybe the Super Deluxe when it's released on July the 12th. My reviews may not be the first you see, but I'm determined they're going to be the best. But what do you think about all this? Do let me and everyone else know your thoughts and opinions, not just on this set, but on the album in general, and what you would like to see going forward from the Lennon estate. You never know who's listening. Thank you so much to Simon at the Lennon estate for sending me this set, and to Universal for the music permissions. We've got lots of exciting videos coming up on this channel, so if you enjoy what we're doing, why not give us a like and a sub? I'll be back next week to celebrate the anniversary of this, the first Beatles album I ever owned. So why not prepare yourself for that by watching a video about the album before? But it's all over for this one, so I'll say bye for now, and thanks for watching.
I think that'll do, right? Thank you very much. Thanks for the session, folks. See you next time.